Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Ted Nelson is a retired Michigan State police officer who worked in narcotics enforcement and trained police agencies on civil asset forfeiture. He believes civil asset forfeiture may have been widely misused and needs to be changed.
When a police officer takes you into custody, they're required to present a report to the prosecutor within so many hours. Their people have to be arraigned within so many hours. They have rights because the system says you're innocent until proven guilty. With forfeiture, the property is guilty until proven innocent. You wouldn't take a fondue set since that wouldn't generate much money at a sale if it was forfeited. So they would take things that had value, whether it be vehicles, whether it be electronic equipment, furniture, things that you could sell later on if the people didn't file a claim. 86% of these seizures are administratively forfeited, which means the police seize it, and after the 20 days go by and no one has filed a claim, that property is automatically forfeited. You have to pay 10% bond of the value of the property to even file a claim. Then you have to get an attorney to go into court. I don't think they were concerned about showing that they were obtained through illegal proceeds. It was more or less part of the whole criminal case and the plea bargain when it came down to the negotiations.
So it was it was conceivable that a prosecutor could come up to you and say, either plead guilty to this crime or you'll never get your property back. Correct.
I think there are certain communities who are affected more by this than others, and I think those communities are very resistant to trust police. They think police will either arrest them or take things from them. It produces revenue for law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement has always been against police working on commission, and it seems like a lot of people feel that's what they're doing.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
This is the Full Melt.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
Steve Green. Stand by for news. The news is upon us. The news is upon us. It is indeed upon us. Can I ask you a question? Are you disenfranchised with your government? I think every Republican just raised his hand. I don't know why. You're in control of most of government right now. I think that you would rather fearmonger amongst yourselves and then amongst the rest of the people who have to vote for those who hold office to hold office rather than pull up your britches and be your smaller government self. But see, I'm just going to tell you that smaller government is only in the realm of government's use of that language. So in other words, when government says, and I'm talking about those Republicans and the people on the Democratic side of the aisle that want to say, no, smaller government. You generally don't have the Democrats doing that, but sometimes they do. Anybody, I'm saying, that is elected as a representative and wants to cry smaller government, when they use that language, they are lying to you. I mean, this is a trick. They're not really doing small government. What they're doing is they're switching stuff around, making you think that government's getting smaller. But that's not really what's happening. I'll give you an example of that here in Michigan today. We played you this bit out of, this was I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be, let's double check here. Wasn't that from the Detroit News, the Free Press? I'm not sure where that article came from earlier. I had it up earlier, and I'm sorry. I'm going to have to look back. This is from MichiganCapitalConfidential.com. I'm giving them credit for that piece up front. MichiganCapitalConfidential.com. Retired state police officer, forfeiture is big money for law enforcement agencies. That's the story. And it is. I mean, this is not new to this show whatsoever. If you are, a historical listener of this program and the different incarnations that preceded it, you will understand that we've talked about this for a long time. I believe that this former retired Michigan State police officer is a member of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. He is. Let me just read you the story because, he says this little in the little video clip that I played for you. They had that to say, but there's more to it. And so I guess before the commercial break comes, I'll finish this part about this story and then lead into the other example that I just said that I would give you here on the program, because there's a great example of how government has not only gone awry, has not only started lying to you about what is smaller government, but it's evidenced in action they've taken today, and I would say that it's purely an indictment of the entire political system here in Michigan about how things get done, about way items get moved forward in our legislature, and that it's been wholesale hijacked by people with money. Now, I'm not, as a capitalist in this country and one who enjoys the fact that this is a capitalist country, I'm not banging on the fact that somebody's trying to make some money. This is what we do here in this country. Well, what I'm having a problem with is the method by which they're going about this. You could say the same thing about the guys who are robbing banks. You know what I'm saying? If you're a bank robber, you're not going about making money. You're going about stealing money. You're using a strong-arm tactic to take somebody else's property away from them to make it your own. And that's really what's happening here in this instance that I'm going to give you after the commercial break. So hang on to that thought for a second while I finish this a bit about this story. The first time that Ted Nelson, the guy that you heard on the front of this program, realized something was wrong with civil asset forfeiture occurred when he was training police officers around the state on the practice. Many of the narcotics teams were seizing items such as furniture and televisions. I don't think they were concerned with showing what they obtained or through illegal proceedings. Illegal proceeds, I should say. Nielsen was quoted this in the article. He was a Michigan State police officer for 26 years until he retired in 2000. Remember, that is pre-9/11. He says he stays actively engaged in law enforcement policy and speaks politically for LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. LEAP has been on this program many times, once as a presidential candidate. Nelson participated in a number of seizures himself and said the civil seizures were often used as leverage in criminal proceedings. This is not what this was intended to do, is it? I mean, it was never intended that they use the property seized in the course of a criminal proceeding in order to leverage them against a guilty plea on such proceedings. Under civil asset forfeiture, law enforcement uses warrants obtained under civil law with a much lower burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence, than the use than in the case with criminal proceedings. When police officer takes you, and so they talked about this actually in the article. I mean, there was definitely I think that little video clip was just outlined in what we're talking about here. You know, he says consent and siege, consent search and forfeiture are good partners, Nelson said. In small offenses, usually involving traffic stops, police would often use a consent search. He says a lot of people don't believe having money in and of itself is a crime. And a lot of them don't understand the forfeiture law. And a lot of those who are afraid to tell police no. Police know how to ask. I taught how to ask, and psychologically, you had the advantage, he added. Nelson said medical marijuana has presented a huge opportunity for police in bringing in revenue through seizures. And that's exactly what they've done. Marijuana is big money. Marijuana has always been the big money for asset forfeiture, said Nelson. Nelson is speaking out on asset forfeiture because he thinks it is preventing law enforcement from concentrating on more violent crime and causing mistrust in the community. And that's exactly what it's done here and in other places. I've said for a while now, and I was called a crackpot, pointed fingers at when I said, look, these guys, remember the Ferguson incident, Ferguson, Missouri? Remember the New York incident? The guy selling loosies on the street gets tackled to the ground, basically murdered by law enforcement over some loose cigarette sales because he didn't put his hands up or something. Remember the guy that was running after a traffic stop from the cop who pulled his weapon and shot him in the back as he ran away? Remember the unrest that followed all of those incidents? I would say that many of those incidents and the unrest that followed has an underlying condition, and that underlying condition is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the minority communities in this country, poor, often minority communities, who are in a position to be used as pawns in the political game. And that's exactly what's going on. See, when when you can target people based on a nonviolent drug offense for mere possession, you bust somebody, they're holding a bag. Maybe they bought 2 bags from somebody just recently. They got this kind of that and this kind of that. They got 2 kinds now. You're going to say that that those bags are packaged separately for sale. You're going to take the guy's car. You might go and get a search warrant on his house. You might take all the stuff in his house. We're talking about, what, $50 worth of weed? 2/8 of weed. And, that's really the street price. It's not as if he grew it himself. We're assuming he bought this from somebody. The police have a house, at least 1 car, all the contents of the house, bank accounts, any electronics. You see how, and when they don't even have to prove that these were, look, no conviction was gotten on this guy. They didn't even get to the point where they convicted this guy. They might have seized that stuff and threw his pot away. But they used the idea that the pot's illegal to get to the stuff. So $50 worth of weed brings in excess of $300,000 in cash through proceeds of sales of property. And the property was obtained by saying, look, it's guilty of a crime. These are proceeds from a crime. And we're going to, and I can't believe in this country that anybody or anything would be guilty until proven innocent. That's exactly what that property is. It's guilty until you can prove it innocent with a preponderance of the evidence. And the police already have a stacked game in those court proceedings. And if you haven't got the money to put down a deposit, kiss that property goodbye. You think this isn't the underlying unrest that causes some of this psychological crap in society?
You're getting the full melt.
Got something to hide? Canalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Canalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Canalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at Canalock.com. Visit Canalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Door Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road. Take care when passing. and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
Don't miss the first ever cannabis competition this year as the prize contest moves from Amsterdam to Jamaica. That's right, it's all Jamaican fun now with the big competition in Negril this November. Get your best travel accommodations now at JamaicaPot.com. Pack your beach bong and swimsuit and party down at the warm sandy beaches of Negril, Jamaica for the first ever big cannabis event this year. Do it in style or come have fun on a budget. Best travel prices now at JamaicaPot.com. That's JamaicaPot.com.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Live for the PetPain.com studios. So I was telling you that some news happened here in Michigan today, and it's not complete yet, but I have to bring it to you as if it were, because I believe this is a train rolling that cannot be stopped. I believe the corruption that I just told you about, the teat that law enforcement, prosecutors, and not just the prosecutors, because there are some comrades that they work with, right? They work with judges. They work with law enforcement, and all of them are hooked on the teat of this lavish nipple. It is abundant. It is a cow that does not stop producing. Except this is a cash cow. So you could see why law enforcement would want to go ringy-ding-ding, oh, the kids, ringy-ding-ding, oh, the schools, ringy-ding-ding, slippery slope, ringy-ding-ding, drug addiction, oh, ringy-ding-ding, there's a bunch of people that, what about the workers and what about the drivers? And, oh, they got every little clock, bell, gong, and whistle they want to squeeze, bang on, and smash to get you to pay attention to their marijuana trouble, because if they lose marijuana as an issue with which they can get seizure, asset forfeiture, lost to them, then they're up Schitt's Creek, aren't they? They're up that creek without a paddle because the legislature has traditionally been forcing them into this place. Not only legislatively here in Michigan, but in other states, they've been using this exact same technique, Michigan just being one of the worst examples in the nation. Worst in the nation, I tell you. Not because I'm here, but because that's what the statistics say. Look, the government in this state's got a failing grade on corruption. And when you use the citizenry as a tool with which to raise money, you are not only corrupt, but you ought to have your effing head blown off, in my opinion. Take that how you want. You should not be using the citizens of this country to line your pocketbooks. You're crushing the fabric of the country over some fact that most of the people in this country have a penchant to want to use substance on occasion. Some of them routinely. This is a harmless factor. The thing that you're doing to stop all of that is much, much worse than the thing that you're complaining about. And when the cure is worse than the disease, you can't take the cure. You got to deal with the disease. If you want to call it a disease, I don't characterize it that way. So here's this is the train that began rolling in Michigan today. Oh, good. You got me stuttering now. Michigan today. In Michigan today is this business about a package of bills that has previously, with the exception of one of these two bills in the 3-bill package, was previously put up in 2 preceding legislative sessions. These are 2-year sessions. So 3 years ago, this was introduced, carried through the end of its legislative session. It died. We raised a lot of money for this individual during that session. We're talking about Rep. Mike Calton, a Republican from Nashville in this state. It's a little tiny district. Nobody paid attention to Mike Calden in little tiny Nashville, Michigan, until he jumped on the marijuana bandwagon. And then, boy, he got some focus. He got some attention. He grew a little clout, and he also found a way to raise funds, attention, so that he could be elected again this last session. And he did. He got elected again. We helped him do it because we believe Mr. Calden was on the side of patients and caregivers in this state, that he was looking out for the people, for his constituents, but he wasn't. He didn't show his true colors until people with larger pocketbooks came along and said, no, Mr. Calden, I know this is the last hour of the last day on December. This is the last day of the legislative session in December in 2014, and I know that you're poised to pass these bills for patients and caregivers, but you can't do that because here's a big check. Oh, that's the first thing you got to pay attention to is the big check. This is tit-for-tat politics. It's illegal. Here's a big check. Now, what you want to do is withdraw that bill. Withdraw it right now. Because we got the Sheriff's Association over here. They want to do some changes. We want to pass your bill, but we want to pass it in a way that's good for our friends and the people that we know are connected with, and not those guys. Those people that are running those illegal dispensaries all over the state, those guys are criminals. We can't let them into the system and legitimize it. So we're going to legitimize our own system, line our own pockets, raise taxes, raise fees, raise money, create a bunch of jobs that didn't exist before, including hiring 34 new state police troopers to undergo enforcement and checks on these facilities. I'll read you the story. These two bills were put together originally by the patient caregiver groups, the patient caregiver legal entwines. I mean, all the people that they did repeal today, it's Michigan normal. There's a bunch of wings that came into this. And we were pushing for this modification in the law so that it allowed for dispensaries. It's the one thing they left out of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that's caused this to be a giant conundrum in this state. And so what they've done is they've come by and they've dangled this check and they gutted those bills and changed them, every single one of them, and added a new one. Because some other out-of-state company who does this seed-to-sale tracking business, this company out of California, they wanted in on this. So they paid off another legislator, Mr. Kesto, to bring that bill. House bill, was it 4827? I think it's 4827, House bill. It's a seed-to-sale tracking bill. Now, I have no problem with adequate, robust regulation. I don't. I think it's required in many places. But when you thwart the efforts of the burgeoning underlying cottage industry that is got its neck out on the chopping block in the name of medical need, medical necessity, for people who are suffering in various ways, in terrible ways in this state. If you're going to put those guys out as sacrificial lambs to line your freaking pocketbooks with, you've got blood in your pockets, not money. And I won't stand for it without calling you out on it in a public, mouthpiece way. I won't stop blowing that horn until everybody knows what you're doing. Dateline Lansing. Medical marijuana dispensaries will be taxed at 3%. Oh, that's not too bad, is it? And customer patients would also pay the state's 6% sales tax. Okay, we're at 9% now. Under legislation set for a vote on Wednesday in the Michigan House. That vote was today. All these bills passed, by the way, all three of them. The smallest the largest no vote margin was 11 votes. All the remaining nearly 100 votes were yeses. So we're like 96 to 97 yes votes in all of these. Some of them as many as 99 yes votes. Or one of them, 99 yes votes. Was it 99 to 6 or something? The proposed dispensary tax was lowered from 8% in a substitute bill adopted by the House late on Tuesday, and the medical tax would be eliminated if recreational marijuana use and taxable sales are later authorized in the state. The three-bill package would make major changes to the state's medical marijuana program, including... let's see, the including part was coming in by me. I was going to interject, but I have to read you the story. They changed a lot of stuff. A lot of definitions. Modified, tweaked, changed for obvious reasons. Would make major changes to the state's medical marijuana program approved by voters in 2008. While it would not end patient-caregiver system that allows for home growing, it would create a separate regulatory framework for medical marijuana businesses. This is where it gets ugly. The legislation would regulate dispensaries, create licenses for growers and distributors, establish a seed-to-sale tracking system for medical marijuana, and clarify that patients can use non-smokable forms of the drug. So that's the edibles bill or the oil bill, the concentrates bill. Marijuana businesses could only operate in municipalities that allow them. Local governments could also limit the number and type of facilities that can operate in their jurisdiction. So it is still the local option bill. And not only is it a local option, but we can locally option it and put additional requirements and measurements in place that the state didn't have. So there might be some more licensing and cash-making opportunities for local governments in this bill. See how they've laden it? They've laden it with just opportunities for governmental money to be made, new employees to be hired, new health programs to be created. I mean, the incentive to grow Michigan's government in this bill is crazy. And you know, I don't mind normally growing the government when it's necessary. None of this is necessary. This is just paying political dues. This is just the comeback for us dropping cash in your political action committee pockets. Supporters say the legislation will regulate the growing medical marijuana industry while ending legal uncertainty over dispensaries and edibles, providing patients with safe access to consistent products. Nothing wrong with that, right? If that's what it is. I think you can do that completely within the cottage industry that's already been created. We've been doing it for 8 effing years. No, now I've lost the story. So what happened there? Hang on a second. I got to go back to it now. Damn it. You see, this is what happens in a live program, but not only that, never mind. So their medical marijuana advocates argued the 8% tax rate that was previously proposed would have forced unreasonably high prices for patients and encouraged continued trade on the black market. Some remain concerned about a proposed oversight board and licensing system, which is modeled after alcohol distribution and would prohibit direct transactions between growers and retail stores. Instead, a paid, quote, secured transporter. We're talking about armed guards. Inserted into every place where that cannabis has to be moved around on the wholesale level. From the grower to the tester, from the tester to the distributor, from the distributor to the retail store. Each one of those places, armed transport has to be involved. Under the proposal, the state could charge up to $10,000 a year per license for large-scale growers and a regulatory assessment for processors, secure transporters, dispensaries, and safety facilities. You see how much regulation has been built into this? I'm not talking about robust standard regulation. I'm not talking about necessary enforcement regulation. I'm talking about padded regulation. I'm talking about adding a bunch of pork in there that is not only not necessary, but costly. If you burden this so top-heavy with expenses at the government level, what do you think this is going to price out at in the said retail store level? So you've got a guy making profit at the grow level, right? He's growing it and selling it at a profit. Then he's got to tack on the charges for the armed transport to the testing facility. They got to tack on their testing fees. Then they got to tack on the same move, another armed transport to the distribution facility. And then the distribution facility has to yet tack on its profit margin to pay its employees and overhead. And then again, additionally, put on another armed transport fee. Layers and layers. And each one of these layers is regulated by people who have no existing jobs currently under this framework. There is no regulator. This is instituting new regulation. So there's a whole bunch of jobs. Each one of those stages, the armed transporters get regulated. Those guys got to have oversight and people overseeing them and issuing licensing and collecting fees. Same thing goes with all of these other stops along the way, right? That's how they built this in. It's all nonsense. It's all ridiculous. Revenue from the 3% dispensary tax would be divided between municipal governments, 30%, counties, 40%, and county sheriffs at 5%. What the F do the cops need money out of this for? Oh, that's right, because they can't seize your dope money anymore. Where medical marijuana facilities operate, along with the state's 25%. So the state gets a healthy chunk by themselves. Burp, burp. Application fees and annual regulatory assessments are designed to cover the cost of implementation, giant costs of implementation, huge costs of administration, and another giant cost of oversight of the medical marijuana business system, which also calls for new civil fines against licensees who violate the act. Oh, another way to collect. Hey, guess what? You courts guys gets to make money. The local places where all the courts exist, they get to make money. Cops get to go after them. They get some money out of this. Everybody's employed in this game, right? F you. There were 96,408 qualifying medical marijuana patients and 22,966 registered caregivers in Michigan at the end of the 2014 fiscal year, according to the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, which oversees the program. This story from MLive.com. So it's not the end of the world, but it is. And I'll tell you why. Well, it's not the end of the world. It's the end of the marijuana world as Michiganders know it from the medical marijuana standpoint. I mean, the patient caregiver system is still intact, right? But right now, a number of those patients and caregivers sell their existing overages, probably illegally, to dispensaries who then redistribute that to people with cards. And they provide variety. It was taught to me in college and to many others. The diversity is important in society. And we used to do experiments about diversity and what it means. And I'll give you a classic experiment about diversity. And this is what I mean. We're talking about medical marijuana caregivers and patients providing diversity inside the system. Now going to be taken over by large-scale grows with $10,000 operating fees. If you've got a wolf population and you tweak the computer to tell the wolf population to grow and get smaller, and then you've got the animal population the wolves feed off of goes up and down. If something impacts that wolf and the species diversity is the same, it's going to impact all wolves. Whereas there's diversity in the system, one wolf gets sick, all the rest live. Same thing goes with diversity in medical marijuana for patients who need variety.
Getting the full melt.
Get ready, let's go. Hey, na, 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 na. Oh, hey, now, let's go. Yeah, I've got style. I'll make it wild. Change it up and switch it up so versatile. I'll be myself and I'm gonna let everybody know.
We have the latest styles to mix it and mash it. So make it your own and bend the trend. JCPenney. When it fits, you feel it. During the JCPenney Back to School Hot Sale, get an extra $10 off when you spend $25 or more with coupon. Nike, Converse, Levi's, and other exclusions apply.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
Don't miss the first ever cannabis competition this year as the prize contest moves from Amsterdam to Jamaica. That's right, it's all Jamaican fun now with the Big Cup competition in Negril this November. Get your best travel accommodations now at JamaicaPot.com. Pack your beach bong and swimsuit and party down at the warm sandy beaches of Negril, Jamaica for the first ever big cannabis event this year. Do it in style or come have fun on a budget. Best travel prices now at JamaicaPot.com. That's JamaicaPot.com.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors, and flavors. or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
We ask people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Really simple to find us. If you want to get us every day and you can't listen live, it's easy to click and subscribe to us on iTunes. Simply find the iTunes logo right there at the top of thefullmelt.com. Click and subscribe. Just that simple. Gotta tell you that there's more news in Michigan today. I have to give you a news flash that autism was added to the Illinois panel of approved medical marijuana conditions. Just today it was finally approved. Not only autism, but a number of other conditions that weren't clearly already approved. Hopefully they're making some progress in this way. I'll get to that story in moments. Today, reporting Detroit has 148 marijuana dispensaries. This according to the Detroit Free Press and Joe Gillen, the staff writer for the Freep. A new report pegs the number of marijuana dispensaries in Detroit as 148. Prior to the report, Detroit public officials could not say how many dispensaries there are, partly because they're opening at such a rapid pace, but mostly because the city does not keep track of them. The city council is debating proposed licensing regulation. A proposed public hearing is set for 10 a.m. on Monday. Of the 148 dispensaries in Detroit, 100 are within 1.15 miles of the suburbs. 59, including some of those near the suburbs, are within 1,000 feet of an active school, according to the report, Weed in the D, published Monday by local mapping company Loveland Technologies. The report cautions that estimates are probably low. If so, Detroit would have more than one marijuana dispensary per square mile. The city is 39 square miles in size. Marijuana is clearly a growth business, the report says. The numbers in this report have had to be revised upwards several times as new dispensaries opened and more are expected to open in the near future. Loveland Technologies put the data and corresponding map together by canvassing more than 400 miles of commercial corridors and by using online resources. The company has mapped properties in Detroit and other cities in an effort to prevent tax foreclosure and eliminating blight. The guy named John Grover is the lead surveyor for Loveland, says the report is politically agnostic. Nobody paid Loveland to produce it, he said. This is a very hot legislative topic right now. You're not kidding. Regulating and licensing dispensaries. Because of the nature of the business, there's no list out there, Grover said. Our goal was to put a mostly firm number and firm locations of where these were at. Councilman Scott Benson, who has seen many dispensaries in his northeastern district, says that these figures in the report seem about right. These numbers, while not surprising based on my informal survey of dispensaries in the 3rd District, further support the critical need to regulate these businesses, Benson said. The proposed regulations from Councilman James Tate would set a process for licensing dispensaries and regulating where they can be located under these ordinances. Note the following. Existing medical marijuana shops would have to get a license or be shut down. Operators would be subject to a police background check. Drive-through service would be prohibited. Dispensaries could not be within 1,000 feet of a school, religious institution, or public park, or within 2,000 feet of another dispensary. So I would venture to say that if you have a dispensary in Detroit, remember, these guys are already within a mile of each other, at least. Some of them I know dot the 8-mile corridor and 7-mile corridors, the infamous 8-mile road. Number of bordering communities like Dearborn, Warren. These are places where the Ford Motor Company is located and many of the workers that occupy those plants. A lot of trouble in the medical marijuana arena here in Michigan. And as you see Detroit jump on to the bandwagon to do exactly what Ann Arbor and Flint have done in Genesee and Washtenaw counties, they're going to do again in Wayne County there in Detroit. Lansing did this in Ingham County. Some other smaller communities, there are too numerous to mention here in the state, have done similar things where they've offered, just right here in conservative Oakland County, the seat of, probably the richest tax base in the state. In fact, I think only beat out by Livingston County very recently. Those numbers may need checking. Livingston and Oakland counties, pretty much the number one, I would say, per capita income. There's a little community right here in conservative Oakland County that has said the same thing. We're going to allow for dispensaries here. Screw you, all you people who say no to the weed when it comes to medical need. These guys, Detroit's going to do this. And this is in light of the state taking charge of this and saying, oh, no, all those models aren't going to work right? So we're going to pass a law that says you got to do it through this other system. You have to be a licensed grower from us. So if you're going to do this, you could still be a dispensary, but you're going to have to pay the $10,000 fee at the state level. You're going to have go through all the hoops and barriers that the state's going to put into place to vet you out to occupy that license. And then you're not going to be allowed to purchase any of your cannabis and debate its price with your current providers. All the overage that's coming from the extra marijuana, the stuff that is beyond the need of the individual growers, where they've been lucky to produce more than they needed. So they provide that right now to these people. You're not allowed to get it from them anymore. You'd have to get it from one of these guys with these $10,000 grow licenses, right? You can grow up to 1,500 plants in these facilities. Doesn't cap them at all. Could be anywhere in the state. It would seem that many of them might choose to go way into the northern woods, where property is cheap and eyes and hands to break in or cause problems are scarce. Then you'd have to do all that transporting, all that armed guard transporting, right? Oh, those guys are rubbing their hands together. There's nothing wrong with job creation. We've created a lot of jobs and maintained this state with those jobs, despite the fact that stuff was being taken wholesale. This is no different than the forced quartering laws enacted by Great Britain on our citizens here. You know what forced quartering is? I thought it was when your mother made you cut the sandwich into 4 pieces. That's not what forced quartering is. Forced quartering is when you are forced by the government to provide housing to the military. Oh, that's right. Guess what? Knock, knock, knock. We're the military, and we need to come into your house and take it over because we're going to ransack your refrigerator, and we are going to put you out in the doghouse while we sleep in your house because we're the military. This is much the same thing. They're doing that same thing. It's just instead of you housing them, they're housing themselves, and they're taking your money to do the housing, you see. And the legislator is part and parcel to this crime because the legislature wants to not have to tax John American Citizen or Jane American Citizen to employ said needed safety patrol. And this is no longer safety patrol. If they were interested in safety, they'd be protecting those people who are getting murdered, raped, beaten, robbed, having their cars hijacked. I mean, these reports are all over the news at night in every major city in the state. None of that protection's happening because it's too dangerous. We'll track that down after, they're sleeping at night. When we get around to it. Right now, we're busting into that guy's door because he doesn't have a gun. We know he's got weed in there, and that means we get to take his house and his car and take his kids away and employ those people at CPS. And there's this whole corruption ring that is built around the prohibition of cannabis in this state and in the rest of this country. It's got to stop. It has to stop. I don't know how else to say it. It's not just cannabis that's being thwarted by this corruption. It's not just other drugs. that are being impacted by this corruption. It's not. In fact, the drugs aren't being impacted by this corruption at all. This is the same thing as, having a farm full of sheep and saying that, you sheared a little bit of wool off of one of those sheep, so you made a dent in the herd. You haven't. There's a lot of shear. You could shear all day and all night and still have sheep. In fact, when you get done, there will be other sheep. The first sheep that you shore will already need shorn again. You'll never catch up. There's so much of the drugs out there. So the drugs aren't being impacted at all. That says that it's a failed policy. When the prohibition can't be enforced because there's so much of it out there that it's just shooting fish in a barrel until you run out of ammo, well, that's the game is still going on. The whole thing is still going on while you're going back to reload and while you're taking a nap and while you're processing the fish you shot in the barrel. It's still going on. It's a failed policy. So what is the need to keep the policy in place? Oh, that's right. It's all that free money. It's got to stop. If the police no longer want to have protests against them, if they want to gain favor back with the citizens, it's not us versus them. You're part of us, you jack bastards. You're jack bastards. When you put on that badge and that uniform and haul around that gun and that taser and all that equipment and say that it's us versus them. It's not us versus them. You're part of us. You're a civilian just like us. You're not the military. And you don't get to have military implements and hardware. That's a lot of bullshit nonsense, too. Military implements and hardware were banned to be used against U.S. citizens by the military. So why should it be okay for the military to give it to you to use against the same populace? It's constitutionally forbidden. So how many of these lines can you approach, push the line on, encroach upon, trample, surpass, penetrate before the Constitution matters anymore? That's what I want to know. We're going to talk about this in greater detail tomorrow as the guest for the entire hour is attorney from Michigan, Denise Policella, who says she has I guess the best way to put it would be a hand in crafting the legislation in question here today under the guise and microscope of corruption in this state. She has a different point of view.
You're getting the full melt.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road, take care when passing, and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
Imagine a world where patients can use marijuana like any other medicine. The Marijuana Patients Organization challenges the status quo by helping our neighbors to enjoy a better quality of life. Visit the MPO at marijuanapatients.org and enjoy informative articles, engaging debates, and information about treatments, doctors, and dispensaries in your area. Over 50,000 people have registered at marijuanapatients.org since 2010. Join us at the Marijuana Patients Organization today, marijuanapatients.org.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com. or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. PetPain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
Got something to hide? Canalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Canalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Canalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at Canalock.com. Visit Canalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade. You got this.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
I'm gonna need someone to help me. I'm gonna need somebody.
So on a lighter note today, I wanted to tell you about this other thing that I thought was a little bit comical at least. Got to have some comical relief. I don't know how funny this is, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. So, yeah, because yesterday's funny story was the guy who called the cops to complain that he got too high in Ohio. I mean, there was that story about the cop. Remember the story about the cop also in Michigan? Not too far from where this Ohio stuff's going on, incidentally. Phoned in to say that this is in the Detroit area. It's made national news at the time. Look it up online. You get a chance to Google the audio tape. It's the cop who calls 911. I think it was Dearborn Heights. I think it was Dearborn Heights police that did this. Some rookie cop. He decided he probably busted somebody with some weed. Took the weed home with him. Had his wife put the weed in some brownie batter. So they actually just dumped the weed in the batter, the brownies, and made brownie weed. It's not how you do it, by the way. If you're doing it that right, well, you don't know what you're doing. And then ate the brownies, and then got so high off of eating the brownies that he thought the world was collapsing on him. This guy in Ohio did the same thing. I read you that story yesterday. But I think this story about the first ever cannabis museum. That's right, a cannabis museum. It's a close second. This according to the Sun-Times network at suntimes.com. Oakland Museum wants to start a conversation about cannabis. The Oakland Museum of California plans to open the country's first ever marijuana-centric museum exhibiting this April. Altered State, Marijuana and California will explore many uses of cannabis as well as changing public attitudes and other related issues, according to an OMCA press release. The exhibit is designed as a catalyst for conversation and reflection, according to the statement, and will provide museum visitors the opportunity to add their voices to the evolving conversation. California is on the verge of making important decisions about marijuana that will impact people living in this state. Kelly McKinley, director of the lab, says. OMCA is a place where people can come together to learn, question, and add their voice to the different points of view about this topic at a very critical time in public decision making. New roles for today's museums. They say this exhibit showcases the role museums can play in building awareness and starting conversations, dialogues around important community issues. The roles of museums in today's world are shifting, the director says, through a release. That's the press release. We aim to inspire Californians to create a more vibrant future for themselves and their communities. As part of this, we're dedicated to being a place where people can come to learn about complex topics and, more importantly, add their voices and stories to the dialogue. Boy, they said that 3 times already. This exhibition is proof of that action. Altered State, Marijuana in California is set to run at OMCA from April through November of next year. So, I mean, what's next? Are they going to do a marijuana wax museum now? Remember when MASH back in the 70s went off the air? Was it the early 80s they finally went off the air? It went on the air in the 70s, like the early 70s. MASH. Early middle 70s. Was it like 76? It was like the bicentennial year when that show went on the air. MASH, about the Korean medical unit. Propelled Alan Alda to fame. God, he's old now. Sorry, it's the end of the show, and it's time for my after-show cigarette. I'm going to light that up. The pleasures of guilty nicotine. So, back in this, I just want to know, because they created when MASH went off the air. That's why I brought MASH up. When MASH went off the air, just like when Archie Bunker, remember Archie Bunker, All in the Family? When that show went off the air, there's a number of other shows. Oh, Happy Days. All of these television shows, we're talking about TV, are in the Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. Cannabis is that issue for the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s and now into this decade. Maybe not in the 90s, maybe not in the 2000s, maybe not even in the first decade. Certainly is this decade's issue. Will there be, I want to ask, an exhibit in the museum that we're talking about here, the American History Museum in Washington, D.C.? Will there be an exhibit there? In the Smithsonian, will there be an exhibit there talking about cannabis? Will there be a wax museum? Will there be a midnight show like the Rocky Horror Picture Show that plays explaining to the world about the history of cannabis? Probably not. I predict someday that on your box of Lucky Medical Greens, that would be the cannabis cereal that they're planning to. No, they're not doing it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a cannabis cereal. You may be reading about the history of cannabis on the back of that said cereal box. I remember that they used to put a lot of things on the back of a cereal box, everything from a punch-out mask. You'll press out the little corrugated mask and wear it at Halloween. Oh, look at Jimmy. He came with his cereal mask. Give him 2 pieces of candy. Couldn't afford a regular mask, just the cereal box mask. And then also, they used to put records. Back when record players were still record players with a needle and the vinyl and all that stuff. They used to press some vinyl right on the back of that cereal box so that you could have either some song that was released as a promotion to go with that cereal box, or more often, a story about the character on the cereal box or some other story. You'd actually punch that baby out of the bag of the cereal box, put it on your record player, and play it. I think that's, maybe they'll have cannabis Dixie cups, where every time you pull a cup, rather than a riddle cup, there's another interesting fact about cannabis. Will Snapple begin selling Snapple-infused marijuana, drinks? Or be marijuana-infused Snapple drinks? Where you pop the top off the Snapple and you read the interesting, fun cannabinoid fact on the bottom. That is the future of America and cannabis. I would say that I would even stick my neck out. Let's go out on a limb just a little bit and say that may be a potential worldview on the subject of cannabis when it's finally laid to rest in its proper place with a proper name, cannabis, not marijuana. Not a slang term, but a real term, a definitional term, a Webster's term, an accurate term, not a slanted term. These are the dreams that I have. I dreamed that one day, at the risk of sounding Martin Luther King-ish, I dreamed someday that maybe tomorrow will come, and this issue will have been buried and boring and moldy. I wish this issue were as dead as the glyphosate-filled soil of most American farms. Because if this issue were that dead, I wouldn't be doing this job. I wouldn't be hosting this radio show. I wouldn't be bringing you the nightly cannabis news, because there wouldn't be any. There's no nightly tomato news, is there? There's no nightly lettuce news. There's no nightly fruit news, except for the Republicans in the debate. and soon to come to the fruits called the Democrats in the debate. Those are the only fruits that we're talking about. This fruit's taking a break until tomorrow. We'll see you then.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.